final story today on Off the Hour. I spoke with the Wilderness Committee to find out what effects Bill C-45 is likely to have on our environment. For the full story, you can check out the Montreal Media Co-op for this and other Off the Hour stories. Here now, an interview with the Wilderness Committee. This week, the government tabled Bill C-45, its second omnibus budget implementation bill. Its 457 pages seek, among many other things, to loosen protections contained in the Navigable Waters Protection Act, weaken the Canada Labour Code, and alter the Indian Act. Much of Bill C-45 was not mentioned in this spring's budget tabled on March 29th. As well, contrary to the purpose of budgets, the bill contains several non-fiscal items that won't be, but ought to be, evaluated by the relevant parliamentary committees. I spoke this week with two environmental groups concerned about the effects of Bill C-45 on Canada's environmental quality of life. Joe Foy is the campaign director at Wilderness Committee Canada, a non-profit NGO who've been campaigning to protect the Canadian wilderness, including critical wildlife habitats and some of the world's last large tracts of old-growth temperate rainforest and boreal forest for more than 30 years. I'm speaking with him today from Vancouver. Thanks for joining me, Mr. Foy.
Well, thanks for having me on.
First, can you tell us a little bit about the Wilderness Committee?
Well, the Wilderness Committee was started back in 1980. We saw at the time a group of Canadians got around a kitchen table here in British Columbia and saw the tremendous opportunity to protect amazing wilderness areas we have in our country and the tremendous threat that we might lose them. And so out here in British Columbia, when we started, about 5% of BC was protected in parkland, and now we're up over 14% is protected in parkland. Wilderness Committee has offices in Vancouver, Victoria, Winnipeg, and Toronto.
Okay. So Bill C-45 was tabled this week at Parliament. What are some of your specific concerns with the contents of that bill?
Well, Bill C-45 is a huge document, 457 pages, and it's a struggle for all Canadians concerned with the environment and other issues, because there's a ton of other issues in this thing, omnibus bill, to get through it. But what jumped out at the page to us was the changes to the Navigable Waters Protection Act, which has been changed now to the Navigation Protection Act. They've essentially taken the waters out of it.
So, what originally, what would that act have entailed?
Well, it's an old act, well over a century old, and what it was meant to do was to make sure that Canadian rivers, oceans, lakes were open to navigation. Allow boats, everything from big steamers right the way down to canoes and kayaks, to be able to move across the landscape on water. What it's become, however, because we're a federated nation, we're a federation, it was a gateway for local citizens to bring environmental regulation by the federal government into land use decisions. So the Navigable Waters Act applied to all bodies of water that you could float a boat on, essentially. And what that meant was that when big industry came to your town or village anywhere in the country and they wanted to mess with your rivers, there would be some kind of process that would alert you as a citizen that something was going on. Now, what this government has done is it has greatly narrowed the amount of waterways that this act applies to now. It's not any water that you can float a boat on. It basically narrows it down right across the country to 162 bodies of water, including three oceans, 97 lakes and ponds, and 62 rivers and streams. And if your local water isn't one of those, it will not trigger a federal alert, as it were, that something's going on.
Okay, so the original purpose of the bill would have been to have oversight so that we can keep an eye on our waters. Why should we be concerned that there's no longer oversight?
Well, how this change has been framed by the federal government is that they made this change to make it easier for cottage owners to put in wharfs and municipalities to put in small bridges. But the change actually also stipulates that pipelines will no longer be vetted by this act. And that gives a little hint of what this act is all about. Out here in British Columbia, I can name 3 projects that this act has played an important role in. One of them is a giant copper mine that right next to a very rich fishing lake called Fish Lake on the Chilcotin Plateau. First Nations are opposing it. And the Navigable Waters Act helped bring in a federal environmental assessment process on that mine, and that's a very important thing because it means people get to have their say. There was a huge demonstration yesterday in Victoria against proposed pipelines, shipping tar sands crude across the West and into the Pacific Ocean and bringing all sorts of tankers from Asia. Now, with these changes, these projects will not have that kind of oversight. Our folks there's just a ton of industrial projects, big and small, that are now more able to get under the radar when it comes to Canadian waters.
In British Columbia's capital, people were protesting on the lawn of the legislature. How can citizens across the country get involved with efforts to call attention to the negative effects of Bill C-45?
Get organized, find out what the organization you enjoy working with is doing to defend our bedrock environmental legislation. For instance, the changes to the Navigable Waters Act throughout Manitoba, that affects the people that like to go canoeing and recreate on the waters. It no longer regulates somebody from building some sort of structure that stops you from doing that. So I believe we need a big, wide-based pushback, and I believe that's what we're going to see.
That does it for this edition of Off the Hour, produced by Montreal's Community News Collective. My name is Amy, and along with Vanessa and Andre, we've been your hosts for tonight, and David has been our tech. And thank you to Nicole as well for bringing us a story. Thank you are also due to all those who make educational and inspirational radio here at CKUT possible. And a friendly reminder to make your pledges out to CKUT's funding drive at 514-907-9424. And we're so happy to be 25 years on the air, and we hope it's a million more. So for more information on anything you heard tonight, or if you would like to participate or support news produced by and for the Montreal community, please contact us at 514-448-4041, extension 6788, or news@ckut.ca. You can follow us on Twitter at CKUT News. And stay tuned for Cafe coming up next. Thanks for joining us.